Hi, Year 9. In order to get on track for Chapter 5, we are going to do a summary of the last couple sections for your notes. So go ahead and label your paper 5A, 5B, which is really just introducing linear relationships and learning what an axis-intercept is. So go ahead and label that as your topic, and we'll go ahead and review what we've been doing in class so far. Over the last couple days, we've been practicing graphing, and especially in class today, we did the same thing, where if I want to plot a line, y equals x plus 2, notice I have two pronumerals, an x and a y, which means the best way to learn how to graph is by making a table. And this question in particular asks you to construct a table, which we just drew, and make a table of values where your x is between -3 and +3. So I'm going to start with my x as -3, and then -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to use my calculator to substitute in the x values. So using my calculator, I would wind up putting in x is as a bracket, and then +2 outside the bracket. So that way, whatever number I'm on, so let's say I'm going to find my corresponding y value when x is -3. I'll put the -3 in the brackets, +2, and I'll wind up with -1. If I substitute -2 into the brackets, -2 + 2 is 0. So what's happening along the way is -3 + 2, which is -1, -2 + 2, which is 0, -1 + 2, and so on and so forth. So this is the part that we would do in our calculator in order to find out what points we're actually going to graph. So here are a list of my points if I go ahead and do that for every x value that I have listed. You all have a grid notebook, so I want to be able to draw a nice straight line. So I'm going to start here. There's my y-axis. Starting here, there's my x-axis. And I'm going to always put arrows on the end of my lines, even if they are my axis. So there's my x-axis, there's my y-axis. And the points that I'm going to graph are -3, -1. So my x, remember, only goes left or right, and my y goes up or down. And I go left if my x value is negative. I go right if my x value is positive. And then for my y, I go up if it's positive and down if it's negative. So go ahead and pause the video here and see what your graph would look like, and let's see if we actually match. So these are all of my points that I will now connect to make a line, and I'll put an arrow on either end. So we've been practicing graphing using this table for a while now. Specifically, what I want to point out to you guys is that when I cross the x-axis, that's called my x-intercept. If you think of an interception in football, right? Especially American football, they always say an interception when somebody runs and takes the ball before it gets to the other team. So my x-intercept for interception starts at -2, and it's on the x-axis, so it's at 0, -2, 0. And my y-intercept is on the y-axis. It's right where you cross the y. It's called your y-intercept or interception. Okay? And that is where my x value is 0, but it's actually up at +2. All right? So those are just some key points to always make sure that we're aware of. We have skipped 5C because it is an extension topic. So we are going to move to 5D, which is what we were doing in class today. And that is looking at lines that only have one intercept. So that means they only cross the x or the y-axis, but not both. So go ahead and label 5D on your paper, and let's take a look at what those lines look like. So if I were asked to graph the line y equals 5, notice that all of my y values would have to be 5. So if I just made a quick table, I could pick any numbers for my x, but my y always has to be -5. So I could choose any values for my x. So let's say I might choose -1, 0, and 1. If I go to graph, so let's go ahead and draw my graph. There we go. I've got my arrows. Okay. -1, -5. Let's use a different space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, -5, 1, -5. I wind up with a horizontal line at -5. So the same thing will happen when y equals 6. However, my line, I'll do it in red, is going to be down at 6. Okay? So notice that this green line crosses at -5, and this red line would cross at -6. So then my question is, what would happen if x is equal to 3? So instead of being told what your y value is, let's say that if you made a table, it says that your x has to be 3. So now, if x is 3, your y, again, could be anything. So let's say this is -1, 0, and 1. Try to graph those points and see what they look like. So when your x's are repeating, they wind up looking like they're stacked on top of each other, which makes a vertical line. So when x is the only pronumeral, it winds up making a vertical line, and it crosses at the actual number 3, and then it continues to go up and down. Whereas when you have y equals a number, it is a horizontal line, and it crosses through the number, and then it keeps going left and right. So this is a little recap of all of the lines that we have graphed so far so that you can keep your notes organized. And we will revise this tomorrow and then head into our new section next time. Have a good night. Bye.